Welcome everyone to the Integrated Joint Board meeting of the 27th of June for Perth and Kinross. So welcome everyone. I appreciate these are new hybrid arrangements and we'll take a wee while to familiarise ourselves with it, but be patient with us and with each other. But we will do our best to get through the meeting today without anyone feeling as though they've not been able to communicate with us. Okay, thank you. I was just reflecting last night that it has been 3 months since our last meeting because of the hiatus during the local government elections. So it has felt like a very long time. And it's also very long time since I've actually met some people face to face for the first time in some instances since I started here. So I'm quite pleased that I'm able to do that now, and hopefully we will be able to do that more fully in future across all of our work. I wanted to say some particular welcomes today to a number of individuals. First of all, I'd like to start with the first meeting of the IJAB in terms for elected members. And we have councillors Colin Stewart. Colin Stewart is also the vice chair. Sheila McCole, Michelle Frampton, and David Illingworth. And I'm really pleased to see them here and look forward to working with them in future. We also have a proxy today from NHS Tayside, that is Graham Martin. That's his first meeting here with us. I also want to acknowledge one of our retiring members, Lynn Blair, who represented Scottish Care and was the independent representative. She's been a very regular attender with the Integrated Joint Board, and I would describe her as a stalwart representative of the care home sector and a shining example of working in partnership for many years. I think particularly more so during the COVID-19 period, where it's been particularly challenging. I also want to mention that there will be a series of induction sessions is being offered to all new and existing members, including one-to-one sessions, and that there will be an opportunity following approval of the revised integration scheme, which is later on the agenda, to have some development time to ensure that all members are clear about the role and function of the Integrated Joint Board in relation to the revised scheme. So there's quite a lot to talk about today. There are some changes to the agenda. Item 7.2 has now been withdrawn, and that was the update on the redesign of substance use services in Perth and Kinross and the implementation of MAT standards, which, as some of you will be aware, were published during last week. I'm going to pass to Jackie Pepper to update us on why the paper has been withdrawn. Jackie.
Thank you very much and good morning, everyone. I'm Jackie Pepper, Chief Officer for Health and Social Care Partnership. And last week we received a letter from the Minister Angela Constance, who's the Minister for Drugs Policy, indicating that as a result of the Public Health Scotland MAT Standards Implementation Benchmarking Report, which was published on Thursday, there will be a direction issued to chief officers and chief executives of the local authority and NHS boards to bring forward an improvement plan by the end of September, which will be informed by the user experience and user voice. So there will be a need to produce an improvement plan and an implementation plan for September. So it's anticipated that will be brought forward for the next IJB meeting in August, and provide more detail for members at that point. Thank you.
Did everyone hear that? Okay, thank you. There is a further minor change, which has been pointed out by Jane Smith, the Chief Financial Officer, in that the order of Section 8, Finance and Governance, it should, under protocol, be that 8.2 should be presented first, followed by 8.3 second, and then finally the 8.1 will be the third. So the papers are still there. It's just that they have to come in a certain order. And Jane will explain that when she does her own session on that later on. Okay. Right. That then takes us on to the first item, which is, are there any declaration? Oh no, wait a minute, before I do that, can we formally introduce ourselves around the room, and then we'll go to those online. So my name is Bob Benson, I'm the chair, and I'm going to pass to my right.
Sorry, we're still trying to work out these mics and how to synchronize the buttons, but sorry about that. Hi, I'm Jackie Pepper. Pleased to meet you all this morning, and it's good to be back in the chambers and to be able to meet each other personally. And a warm welcome to everyone on online as well. I'm the new Chief Officer for the Health and Social Care Partnership.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Colin Stewart. I have previously served on the IJB and have been nominated to serve again following the recent local government elections, and I've been nominated by the Council to be Vice Chair of the IJB.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jane Smith and I'm Chief Financial Officer for the IJB.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sally Peterson. I'm the GP representative from NHS Tayside.
Good morning, I'm Donald McPherson. I'm nominated by NHS Tayside.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Dickey. I'm the registered nurse representative from NHS Tayside.
Morning, I'm Monica.
Hello, I'm David Illingworth. It sounds a bit like University Challenge, and I'm reading that. Never mind. I'm councillor representative on the board. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Zoe Robertson. I'm the interim head of adult social care and service manager for the partnership.
Good morning, I'm Jess Guild, Committee Officer.
Morning, I'm Scott Hendry from Perth and Kinross Council. I'm clerk to the board.
Thanks very much. And now if we go through those who are online, if they introduce themselves. Sandra, I see your face up there first. Can you just introduce yourself, please?
I can, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name's Sandra Auld. I'm one of the public partners on Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board, and I'm one of the service user representatives.
Someone else come through? I think just go, whoever it is.
Okay, I'll go next then if you want. I'm Councillor Sheila McCall. I'm a member of a council representative on the IJB board, the IJB here, and I'm also a council representative to NHS Tayside Board.
Thank you. I see Graham Martin there, and then I see someone else.
Hi, good morning. My name's Graham Martin. I'm Professor of Management at the University of Dundee and also Vice Chair of NHS Tayside.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Michelle Frampton. I'm the councillor representative on the IGB board.
Morning, I'm Stuart Hope, Unison Branch Section for Perth and Kinross and Staff Side Rep.
Good morning, I'm Evelyn Devine, Head of Health for the Partnership.
Good morning, I'm Sandy Watts, I'm the Third Sector Representative.
Who else is still to introduce themselves?
Good morning, I'm Donna Mitchell. I'm the Finance Manager for the Health and Social Care Partnership.
Hi there, Chris Jolly. I'm Service Manager for Business Planning and Performance within the Health and Social Care Partnership.
Yeah. Has anyone else not introduced themselves? Okay. Right, thank you. We have some apologies as well. Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Just to advise, we've got apologies today from Maureen Summers, Ian McCartney, Bernie Campbell, and from Jackie Clark as well.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's proceed now to item 2, which are declarations of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest that they wish to reveal? Thank you. No, thank you very much. Item 3, minutes of the meeting of the Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board of the 30th of March for approval. Can we check the accuracy of the document first if people want to make comment on the accuracy? Thank you. I see one hand up from Donald McPherson. Donald.
Thank you, Chair. Just a minor point on the first page. I'm shown there as substituting for Ronnie Erskine, whereas I think by that point, by the 30th of March, I'd been nominated as a member in my own right. So I think it's just a minor point to correct.
I'm happy to clarify that, and we'll correct in a minute.
Any other amendments to the minute, please? No. In that case, can I seek a proposer and a seconder, please? Thank you. Thank you, Beth Hamilton. And Donald McPherson, thank you. That takes us to the action points update. Who's going to lead on this? Scott, do you want to take us, or is it Jackie going to? Jackie, do you want to lead off on these?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to lead on that. In terms of the actions, 131, the financial framework is still under construction and will be brought forward in due course.
Apologies. Is it now? Yep. A number of meetings have taken place over the last 3 months with the Chief Financial Officers of the Health and Social Care Partnership, Director of Finance, and some of these meetings have included the Chief Officers. They have predominantly been focused on considering the inpatient mental health position for 22-23 in the context of the revised integration scheme. The development of a long-term financial framework has been a part of those discussions, but it's recognised that that will be done in parallel to the development of strategic, more detailed strategic plan for mental health services. So those discussions very much continue.
Yes, and I think it also relates to a further action that we have, which was agreed at the last IJB meeting on the 30th of March, where we agreed to have a development session. And that's action point 138. You'll see that there's an action to have a development session in relation to inpatient mental health overspend and roles and responsibilities. I was going to make a suggestion that included within that, following approval of the integration scheme by the NHS board and submission to Scottish Government, that development session is expanded to include exploration of the integration scheme itself, and particularly the roles and responsibilities for the Perth and Kinross IJB and the lead partner role that has been introduced into that. I suggest that we arrange that as soon as possible with IGB members. Thank you.
Any other comments on that action point? Clearly, any work that we do with other IJBs would probably be a first in Scotland. I have to say, it is unusual for IJBs to meet. And I've asked a lot of health boards about this, and it's actually quite novel. So it would be a first, actually, if we're able to do that, and quite significant. And we should be seeing much more of it. And I do wish we'd had much more learning from such engagements. Thank you very much. So that then takes us back to 139. Membership and roles in joint boards, is that? Chief Officer?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I think that relates to the action around the involvement of public partners on the integration board, integration joint board. I know that we've had some discussions with public partners between yourself and I recently, and an agreement to carry out a self-assessment against certain standards in terms of how well we're doing. We'd agreed to set up a short life working group. We had a discussion on Friday, just the Friday of last week, about bringing public partners, the strategic planning group and the IGB together to carry out that self-assessment, really just to carry out an evaluation of how well we're doing and to create an improvement agenda or an improvement plan around that.
Thank you, Jackie. The standards document that you're referring to, are all board members cited on that?
Thank you. I think it's something that you circulated fairly recently in terms of an update report from the publication from the Coalition of Carers and the best practice standards. But we can recirculate that and provide links to previous biennial reports by that organisation.
Chair, can I come in on that point, please? I'm sorry, I'm unable to find a raise hand function on my screen.
That's absolutely fine, Sandra. And if you're having problems with that, just raise your hand on screen. Okay.
Okay. So just on the action point regarding voting rights, and it might just be helpful if the chair could update the group on previous discussion and how that's moving forward around the agreement that was made to write to the minister regarding raising the issue of voting rights and perhaps some other changes that have taken place just very recently.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure that we did have an agreement on that. That's why we set up the Short Life Working Group.
Well, so there.
I'll ask Scott. I'll ask Scott if I may, if that was that was the case.
So my recollection was that there was quite a lengthy discussion about this several IJB meetings ago, and there was general agreement around the table that parity really for public partners was desirable, and there was an agreement that this would be raised with the two other IJBs at the next meeting of, I'm not sure what that group's called, Chair, but my recollection was that you were going to raise that and seek their views. But I subsequently understand that there has been discussion at the council meeting very recently, and I wonder if it would be useful to just read the action point to update on that.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Scott. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, we've obviously in the minute of the previous meeting, which we've just approved, we did record that there was a discussion on the Integration Joint Board membership and roles, and a meeting to be arranged by the chair and the chief officer to scope out the next step. So I think what we're saying is that that meeting's still to take place in terms of scoping out for the Short Life Working Group. In relation to, I think your point, Sandra, about Perth and Kinross Council, I don't know if the Vice Chair wants to come in and sort of pick up on what was discussed and agreed at the council meeting last week.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know that Councillor Stewart was going to raise this later on in the meeting, but it might as well take it now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So at the Perth and Kinross Council meeting, our first full meeting last Wednesday, we were asked to approve the revised integration scheme. So I was going to bring it up when we were discussing this later on in the agenda, but I had raised an amendment not to change the integration scheme, but for the leader of the council to write to the Scottish Government and ask them to amend the legislation to allow integration joint boards to give public partners voting rights, and that was accepted unanimously across the whole council. So Perth and Kinross Council is going to be writing to make this request of the Scottish Government. I understand that it's secondary legislation, so it's just an order, so it wouldn't require parliamentary legislative time. It would be a relatively straightforward amendment to make, and it was my intention to ask if when we're discussing the integration scheme later on, whether Perth and Kinross IJB might write in similar terms. I had been keeping up with the discussions about the involvement of the public partners at the integration joint boards earlier in the year, and clearly there's a desire to recognise and capitalise on the invaluable experience and knowledge that the public partners bring to our discussions, and to recognise that with potentially voting rights, but it would require a legislative change. So it was my intention to ask if we could write in similar terms to the council will be doing to the Scottish Government for the legislation to be amended.
Comments? Donald.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I know this is an issue that we have discussed at previous IGBs, and I think that predated the recent change in membership. And I think while I can certainly support the principle of all members of this board having a vote, I think the concern that I have is that there's more at stake, there's more at question here than simply giving a vote. I think there would need to be much more clarity on in particular where the roles and responsibilities, and in particular the duties of the public partner representatives, where they are going to be defined. So I think there are bigger questions here than simply saying yesterday they had a vote, yesterday they didn't have a vote, today they have a vote. I think there are issues around whether the code of conduct would apply to them. I think there's also a question around the appointment process for public partner representatives. So I think before I would be willing to support us simply agreeing to write a letter in the same terms as the council, I would rather look to have clarity around some of the ancillary issues that giving that voting right would also bring. As I've said before, I think the public partners play a really important role in the discussions of this body. I think they contribute a lot. So it's not in any way trying to run down that contribution, which I welcome, but rather being clear what it is we're actually asking for. So that's my Chair.
Sandra, do you want to come back in again, please?
Yes, thank you, and thank you to Donald for his comments. I think it's worthwhile drawing to the board's attention that the public partners are bound by the code of conduct in the same way that other members are, and other than the voting rights or lack of them, public partners are full members of the board in exactly the same way as other members are. So from those perspectives, there would be no difference. And as I say, the remit is we have a defined role profile, which has been circulated and previously agreed, and there is a defined appointment process. In fact, more than an appointment process, it's an election process. So the public partners are elected by the service users, by the reference group, and the carer representatives by a carer body. So there is an agreed election process which is already in place, and terms of reference, and as I say, our role profiles are functional already. I don't know if that would serve to satisfy some of Donald's concerns or queries around that.
Well, thanks very much, Sandra, and I'll ask Donald if that does address some of the issues that you've raised. You're not.
Okay. I mean, I think that's helpful input from Sandra. I suppose I would I would like to have the time to reflect on these rather than necessarily going into a vote at today's meeting. But clearly, I'm only one member of this board.
Thanks very much indeed. I think I very much support the principle of this work. That's definitely the direction of travel, and that's been the sense from the board in previous meetings as well. Is how we go about doing this in a way which meets our integration scheme requirements. And when Colin made reference to this being secondary legislation, I'm actually not quite familiar with what that secondary legislation is, and I would quite like to bottom this out. The other thing, what I'm trying to do, Sandra, is to say this isn't just a voting matter for voting members, this issue. I would actually like to see this put before the strategic planning group as well, actually, because but I want this to go forward with the fullest of support, eyes wide open, so people are fully au fait with the implications of it. And I think Donald's raised some of them. I'm going to bring in Sarah Dickey, who's raised her hand here, and if folks could scrutinise online for me, see if there's anyone else who wants to come in. So thank you for that, Sandra. We'll come back to you in a moment. Sarah.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Sandra, for your position. I'm just reflecting on the Chief Officer's comment earlier that some self-assessment work and a short life working group was to be commissioned to take forward these conversations. So if I may suggest, therefore, that we permit these conversations to take place and be inclusive of everyone's views and opinions, so that the decision in regard to whether the IJB supports or not a letter being written to the Scottish Government is done so with correct evidence and due consideration to all of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious of the timescale it would take to do those things that have just been suggested and for that necessary consultation. Jackie, in the work so far, what kind of timescale could we do so we could formally bring a proposal regarding this to the board for voting on? You've indicated in your action point that the short-term working group would report back on the 31st of August. Can we do the necessary consultation in that time for that meeting?
I think that will be dependent on leave requirements over the summer, but it's doable if members are willing to commit the time for that over that period of time between now and early August.
Jackie, would you be content with that? So, Sandra, would you be content with that?
Yes, I would. This is a topic which has been discussed and rediscussed and discussed again. Numerous different forms of leadership of the board, and as I said already, you know, my understanding was that this had already been agreed, and actually my understanding is that there has previously been a letter written to Scottish Government on this basis, more than 2 years ago. So you know, so this is a long-standing topic, that, as I say, my understanding was that had already been agreement made, that the board did support it. So it is a little frustrating that we seem, although we're making some steps of progress, that we do seem to be revisiting it with almost with every new iteration of the committee, bearing in mind that I think only a few of us have now been here, you know, been involved in the IJB for the length of time to have this same memory, almost the organisational memory. So yes, I am content that that we do try and take it forward with it, but I would be keen that we do try and work to as tight timelines as we can. I'm conscious that the formation and the development of the National Care Service is going to be running in parallel with this, and it's something that the public partners, we would like to be as well situated for the formation of the National Care Service as we can be. And I'm sure members are aware that as part of the bill that's been put to Parliament last week or very recently, full membership of whatever the new manifestation of the IJB is going to look like, is going to include service users and public partners. So as I say, it's just because the timelines of that are uncertain that we would continue to want to move this forward. So yes, I would be content with an August timeline on that. Thank you.
And thank you very much for continuing with the issue. But I think it's important that everyone fully understands the implications of it. It's not about agreeing it, it's about what are the implications of it. And I think that's where we need to consult further on it. And Jackie has given a commitment to do her best to come back to the 31st of August, and I will hold us to that as best I can.
Thank you.
Please say it that. Thank you. And sorry, are there any matters arising which are not on the agenda that people want to raise? Okay, I see no hands up. Thank you very much. That then takes us on to the delivering or membership update. That's item 6, verbal update by clerk of the board.
Thank you, Chair. You've already alluded to some of this, so I'll be brief. So just to formally recognise that in terms of the voting members of the IGB following the local government elections in May, we now have Councillor Colin Stewart, who's also the Vice Chair, Councillor Michelle Frampton, Councillor David Illingworth and Councillor Sheila McCole. We do have proxy members for the council. We have Councillor Eric Drysdale, Chris Ahern and Dave Cuthbert. There's still a vacancy for an NHS voting member, which my understanding is that will be filled as soon as possible. You'd also mentioned about Lynn Blair retiring from the IGB, and again, the sort of further representative is to be sought as soon as possible. One decision for the board today is in relation to the Audit and Performance Committee of the IGB, which has a number of vacancies in terms of membership, and also we need to appoint a chair to that committee. The current non-voting members are Bernie Campbell and Sandy Watts, but we do require to seek nominations from the board for 2 members from Perth and Kinross Council and 2 members from NHS Board, and to also appoint from one of those 4 to be the chair of the committee. So if there are any nominations to come forward.
Okay, are there nominations for the chair role for the Audit and Performance Committee? I understand that we have Councillor McCall has been proposed. We'll do the 4 members first of all. Okay. 4 members, I understand from NHS Tayside is Donald McPherson and Beth Hamilton. Yes, sorry.
And for the 2 elected member nominations, Councillor Sheila McCole and Councillor David Illingworth.
That then takes us to the chairmanship role. And do we have nominations for that? Okay, apparently the process is that if I nominate Beth, then we would vote on that. Is that correct? We just need a seconder. We have a seconder. Councillor Illingworth. Okay, there are no other nominations, then we can agree that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, Beth. And I look forward to the committee. Just out of information, when is the next Audit and Performance Committee meeting? Thank you. Okay, that then takes us on to delivering on strategic objectives, item 7. And 7.1 is the Perth and Kinross HSCP 3-year workforce plan 22 to 25. And this is a joint report by the head of finance and the head of adult social work and social care. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm pleased to say a few words by way of introduction. Just to say, very pleased to introduce this 3-year workforce plan for health and social care across Perth and Kinross for approval by today's Integrated Joint Board. This plan, as you know, is for the period 2022 to 2025 and follows a detailed needs assessment and analysis of the current and future workforce requirements, and the plan sets out a series of actions to ensure that we have a workforce of the right size with the right skills and support in the right place across all health and social care services, those that are directly provided, hosted services or commissioned services. We face unique challenges in Perth and Kinross. We have a substantial growth in the older population, and that's set to continue. We have challenges in relation to our geography and delivering person-centred services in rural and remote rural locations. We have the challenge of the complexity of the ongoing recovery as a result of the pandemic and difficulties in recruiting to key roles in health and social care has been around for some time in Perth and Kinross. And we have a workforce profile that demonstrates that we have a predominantly female workforce with a large proportion set to retire in the next decade or so. So this plan benefits from involvement of key stakeholders across the partnership and through a thorough equalities impact assessment, and the outcomes should lead to positive outcomes in relation to our equalities duties. And these are listed in the annex to the covering report on page 17, and I would draw your attention to that. The plan is organised around the 5 pillars set out in the Scottish Government's National Health and Social Care Workforce Strategy. That's plan, attract, train, employ and nurture. And I'm sure you will agree that our greatest asset is our people who give inspiring support for the health, happiness and well-being of the citizens and communities of Perth and Kinross. And they deserve a collective and compassionate leadership which nurtures them and enables innovation and high quality care. So this plan emphasises the importance of that inspiring vision, positive inclusion and participation, and enthusiasm for team working, flexible working and cross-boundary working. I'd like to pay tribute to everyone involved in the preparation of this plan, and in particular to Jane Smith and Kenny Ogilvie, who jointly led on its development. And for all those who did a lot of work in the early drafting and engagement, and for our HR leads in Perth and Kinross Council and the NHS side. Excuse me, and the local partnership forum for their interest and suggestions as this was developed. It is our intention to secure additional capacity to lead on the implementation because it's a large plan, as you've commented on previously, and one of great significance and importance to taking forward our strategic plans. So if approved today, this will then be submitted to Scottish Government by the end of July. And we propose that we bring forward a 6-monthly update on this really crucial plan. And the first update for the period July to December being provided in February 2023. I'm going to hand over to Jane Smith to say a few words.
Thank you, Jackie. Similar to Jackie, it's a pleasure to bring forward the Health and Social Care Partnership 3-year workforce plan. As Jackie said, our workforce is at the heart of delivering integrated services to people of Perth and Kinross. Over 4,500 skilled and compassionate people working in different roles and settings across every community. And we are facing very real workforce challenges, and the data set out in the plan tells us that the challenge is likely to intensify. As demand for our services grow, our workforce is getting older, vacancies are increasing, and the overall working age population in Perth and Kinross is shrinking. The 3-year workforce plan sets out how we will respond to a very significant challenge and our parallel reliance on national actions that are required around supporting recruitment and retention. We set out actions that reach across the partnership that will support, nurture existing staff and attract new staff. But we've also set out essential actions for each staff group, recognising the unique factors that are impacting on the different professions, including our self-employed GPs and within our commissioned services. We've highlighted the significant work already underway to redesign services as set out in the strategic plans approved by the board, which focus on early intervention, integration and locality working, which we hope will drive improved outcomes for our people, but will also drive improved efficiency and effectiveness and, importantly, improved staff experience. We recognise the scale of the ambition set out in the plan and the need to prioritise our effort on those areas of biggest risk, and that will be a key action for the oversight group to make sure that we're prioritising accordingly. We recognise the need to regularly measure our success in reporting back to the board, and the development of a performance framework is a key next step. But we also recognise that in the ever-changing landscape of health and social care in Scotland, that the plan will continue to change, and that we're committed to ensuring that that change is captured both in terms of the challenges we face, but the opportunities that we have to address those challenges. Finally, I want to just recognise that the paper, the covering paper, does indicate annex in the annex that the workforce plan approved today will see us issue directions to Perth and Kinross Council and NHS side, as we would do with papers approved by the board. So, as an additional recommendation to the board, today we would ask them to approve the release of those directions to our partners without whom we will not be able to do anything within this plan. We are utterly reliant on the support from both NHS side and Perth and Kinross Council to deliver. So very happy to take any questions on the detail in the plan.
Any questions for Jane, please? And I'll take Sheila McCall first, and then I'll take Sally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And excuse me, and thank you for this report. It's very comprehensive and is a lengthy read. I'd like to focus in on a couple of areas, please, if I may. On page 44 of the pack, you reference specialist teams for people with autism and learning disabilities. And I'm just wondering what sort of timescale there might be around that in terms of getting it fully implemented. That's my first question. Will I ask the second one at the same time, or will I come back to that?
I think we'll deal with the first question first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Zoe?
Hello, hi, yeah, that's the scope team, is that, I think, that you're referring to there? And
It says it's proposed that a specialist team to support people with autism and/or learning disabilities who have complex needs will be developed. And this will include social workers and social care workers.
yeah, that's right, that's the scope team. So that is
Okay.
largely recruited to, and the team has been established and is up and running now, actually, in the last couple of weeks. So it's a multidisciplinary team, including social work and health colleagues as well. So there are two psychologist posts in the team also. So that team specifically will be looking at early intervention, so working with young people with additional support needs through their school years and into those adult years to try and assist that transition process. Really, I suppose, to get away from the situation that we find ourselves in with people with a complex disability and a spectrum condition when they're slightly older and are struggling in adult services to find appropriate services. So really that early intervention approach in and around learning disability and autism.
Okay, thank you. And may I ask a supplementary to that particular question? So it says in this that it's for adults with learning disabilities who have complex needs, but very often what happens to those who don't have complex needs but whose situation may change? How is that monitored and managed so that they become aware or known to the scope team if there isn't a specialist support for them before that?
I mean, there is always the option for anybody to access the scope team at any point in their journey, recognising that people's situation or their health can fluctuate at any point in time. So anybody can be referred in, and that would be done through an assessment process. But there's no reason why, whether or not you had complexity or not, that you couldn't access that if it was deemed necessary, certainly.
Okay, thank you. I mean, just so the board know, I am a guardian for an adult with a learning disability, and I feel very strongly that the support from social work, when social workers became generalised, that the support for adults with learning disabilities in particular has not been as it should have been. So I'm encouraged and pleased to see that the scope team has been set up. However, I still think there may be a gap in terms of provision of support if they don't have a named social worker and their circumstances do change. You're relying to some extent on the third-party providers being able to assess, and they're not trained in learning disabilities or indeed autism for that matter, to be able to assess when somebody might be or should be referred to the scope team. So I'm just be curious, we don't have to do it today, but I'd be curious to perhaps hear at a later point how that gap will be filled so that people don't fall through the gaps. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely, and we've been working with the providers very closely around the positive behavioural support, acknowledging exactly what you've just said there in terms of not feeling that the level of skill is quite where we want it to be. So we're working jointly on that, and they will be involved in relation to the scope team and will be able to refer into the scope team as well. So I suppose we're acknowledging that and trying to make sure that it's a really collaborative approach to how we work around those complex needs and autism, so inclusive of our third sector and independent sector partners.
It's not just autism, it's other learning disabilities as well, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for that answer. That's encouraging, and I look forward to seeing how that progresses. Chair, I have one other question that's sort of related but not the same.
Thank you. Continue.
Thank you. My next question is really between pages 44 and 46, and it's actually get around the third sector providers. and does relate a little bit to what you've just said in terms of engagement with them. But having engaged with several third-party providers in the past, I find that very often the training of the staff that work in this sector is inconsistent across care providers, that the staff retention rates can be quite low, that the methods of support are different from different providers, which is fine, because so that people can choose a provider that suits their needs best. But I have a concern, and it's an ongoing concern, that the level of training and development that staff in the commission services providers is not necessarily sufficient enough to have that knowledge that you've mentioned earlier on about being able to say, I think somebody should be referred to the scope team. So I'm wondering what we're doing to help, either through the commissioning service or whatever, to try and address that skills gap in the commission services.
Again, I suppose that's the work that I was referring to in and around the work we've been doing around positive behavioural support. So we've had one session, and we have another session coming up with all of the providers that provide support for a learning disability or autism within Perth and Kinross, recognising that they use different models in terms of their delivery, certainly, and there is some inconsistency in there, and that's what we're trying to remedy, is to make that support more consistent. And when the support is not adequate, that they have access to the appropriate skilled, whether they're clinical or social care type support mechanisms within the partnership. So really, really trying to tighten that up, because we've acknowledged that that is the case, and that we have a small group of individuals in particular that providers are struggling to support at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to take the whole meeting on this question, but I will be interested to see, perhaps find out a bit more about this, because I think there are significant gaps there, particularly in how the third party or the commission service providers train their staff. And some of it's, I sometimes feel, is certainly inconsistent, and it doesn't necessarily reflect in the provision of services to those people who need it. And also, I noticed you talk about dealing directly with the care providers, but you haven't mentioned like families of those people who receive the services. So I would hope that they would also be included in these discussions, and they too would have an avenue to access the specialist social work team if they have felt they had concerns.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'd be more than happy to discuss it with you in more depth offline. Really,
That'd
really
be perfect. Thank you.
At that engagement activity, because we're really keen to make this work and to work better.
Okay, that's great. Just send me an invitation. I'll chat about that. Thank you.
I'd like to bring in Jackie. Thank you very much, Councillor McCall. I'd like to bring in Jackie Pepper. And then after, I'd like to bring in Graham Martin. Jackie.
Thank you very much, Chair. It was really just to add that the importance of this workforce plan and how that will help deliver on our strategic plans and the strategic delivery plans that have already been approved by the IJB in the last few months. I'm just conscious that we have a number of new IJB members, and it might be helpful to actually provide some sessions for anyone who's interested, really just to get more of an immersion into those plans and the direction of travel that we're taking, because they link very closely to this, Councillor McCall, and I think that might help answer some of your questions. So I'm pleased that Zoe had agreed to pick that up with you directly, but I think we could offer that more widely in terms of a bit more detail around the strategic delivery plans, and I see Jane nodding in agreement with that as well. So that's an offer that we'll take forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you, Jackie. Graham Martin.
Hi, I chair the Staff Governance Committee for NHS Tayside, and for which we had a meeting last week, for example, where the workforce strategy and the workforce plan for the NHS and indeed the IJBs were discussed and approved. I guess what I'm looking for is some insight and some assurance that insight into how the IJB's plan, workforce plans, and NHS Tayside's plans are aligned. Is there a process by which there is meetings between the HR staff or the staff involved in the IJB and NHS Tayside in producing this plan?
I'm going to ask Jane Smith to come into this, please. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Graham, for the question. There are a number of routes for assuring that alignment. First of all, I would describe the close relationship and support we've had from HR. Colleagues in NHS Tayside who are both supporting the development of our workforce plan and have a close link into the NHS Tayside plan. The other route is through our professional league, who have had a major contribution to the development of the specific staff group sections within the plan, and they're working within wide professional networks across NHS Tayside, which again support the NHS Tayside plan. But thirdly, and more recently, is the set-up of a Tayside-wide workforce planning group. That has just been established over the last 6 months, and probably is at an early stage, but has allowed that alignment and the need for alignment to be better understood, and a commitment around the table to build on those very early meetings to ensure kind of close alignment and close focus on the matters that are most important for the partnerships and for NHS Tayside. So close and collaborative working, a strong commitment at that meeting. I hope that answers your question.
It certainly does. Many thanks.
Thank you. Do we have further questions on this? I'm going to take one from Donna McPherson and then Sally. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just to say, I think this is an excellent piece of work. So well done to Jane and everyone else who was involved in pulling it together. I think it's a really good framework to take this forward. I had just 2 questions, if I may. The first one was around leavers, and in particular, at the same time as we're appointing, we also need to be retaining the people that we have. And a key piece of information is data around the reasons why people are leaving. And I'm asking this question because it came up in another IJB, a concern over access to leavers data. So my first question is to ask for assurance that you're able to get access to the reasons why people have left in sufficient clarity and granularity to be able to learn from them. And my second point was really just, and I was pleased to hear that we're going to be monitoring process against these actions, and I welcome the February 23 update. And I think Jane mentioned that he was going to be preparing a performance framework. And can I ask that when the report comes back to this board, that we get very clear indications of how we're performing against all of these actions, whether it's a RAG rating or some other vehicle, just so that we as a board can get the assurance that we're making. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Next.
So apologies if it's not. I thought this was a fantastic report. I found it insightful, and I really think it reflected what I'm seeing on the ground as a frontline member of staff. One of the points that I just wanted to make was actually on page 50. I was just a little bit concerned about a statement that said that many GPs are now defaulting all mental health related issues to community services. I feel very strongly that that isn't the case at all. We fully appreciate the support that we've had from some of our wellbeing nurses and specialist teams, but that's just the tip of the iceberg of the amount of mental health that we are seeing within primary care and by GPs. And I think I speak for all GPs to say that mental health will still be a fundamental commitment to the work that we do. So I was just a bit concerned that that didn't represent well what GPs actually do and the amount of work they do to support patients with mental health.
Thank you. Are there any further? Jane, do you want to respond?
If I may, first of all, in relation to the point you make around page 50, I think we would have to, acknowledge your concern around that comment. Our professional lead has pulled this together, working with us, but if that isn't reflective of the overall position, then I think we would want to refine that before submission to the Scottish Government and before it's published more widely. In relation to Donald's question about leavers information, I think that we would acknowledge that that is a ongoing issue for us, but within the plan we have an action that seeks to address that, both in terms of the data that's currently available, but also finding ways to encourage staff to take up the offer of exit interviews so that we can enhance the level of data that we've got as well as get access to it.
Jackie.
Thank you very much, Chair, and really just to support Jane's answers, but also in terms of the experience or the employee experience and understanding people's reasons for moving on or leaving the sector. Or I'm really keen to ensure that as a management team and as an IGB that we have ongoing engagement with staff, so that that's much more about understanding what the challenges they're experiencing, what might assist that, and what barriers can be removed for them. As it may be around much more flexible working for staff, for example. So there may be things that we can do, but I think we need to hear that directly and not wait until someone has left the service. So I'm really keen to ensure that we've got that ongoing dialogue and that we're picking up on issues as in more real time than waiting till someone has left and moved on or changed jobs or employment or complete sector. So I'm hoping that you'll see that coming through as well. Donald, thank
you. Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Similarly to Dr. Peterson, just a slight concern about one of the points in relation to mental health, substance use and learning disability nursing. One of the bullets on page 50. The third one down there is high expectations of the general population leading to increased aggression and complaints towards staff. Clearly, there are concerns over provision of inpatient mental health. I just wouldn't want the report to give the wrong implication that that's the fault of patients. It is a high expectation. I think everybody would have high expectations of our mental health services. And I just wondered if I could get some clarity around how high expectations translate into aggression and complaints. I think we might be sending out the wrong signal there. And then I've got another question.
Just picking that question up. Evelyn, I understand that you may be best to answer this one. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I agree with you, Colin. I think that's badly phrased. As in the other comments, I think we should attempt to rephrase that.
Great, thank you very much, Head of Health. And the other question was just around where we have got an identified shortage in posts. What are the steps that we take to fill that shortage or identify the reasons for it? What was the strike rate of advertising versus successfully appointing candidates? How many times did jobs have to be advertised before we were historically before we were able to appoint, and what lessons can we learn from that to fill the gaps that we still have going forward?
Chair, do you want me to come in again?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So historically, Councillor Stewart, I would say that, you know, we can be advertising some posts 2 or 3 times before we actually successfully recruit to them, and certainly that's been the sort of rule of thumbs through the pandemic, because people weren't moving. We're seeing a better sort of response rate now because people are beginning to think differently, and what we are doing is we're beginning to think differently about new roles, encouraging advanced practice, encouraging sort of assistant practitioner roles, and these are proving to be much more successful. And the sort of support roles, you know, we could have now up to 70 applications for one job. So we are seeing a big difference in sort of response rates, albeit for some of the historical band 5 roles, you know, there is definitely a shortage in terms of nursing roles, and also in terms of HP roles. So we are still struggling with that.
Thank you very much indeed, Evelyn. Are there any further questions on this paper before we move to approve? Just one point from me is about the equal opportunity issues, which I think will become more and more predominant, particularly if we're recruiting from overseas as well. And that is about the recommendations from the Quality and Human Rights Commission around improving staff experience of ethnic minority workers and how to attract them. I would very much like that to be upheld in terms of our thinking as we move forward on this. Thank you. And now I'm going to move to the formal recommendations. So 1.1, approve the 3-year workforce plan 22-25. 1.2, request that the Chief Officer submit the plan to the Scottish Government by 31st of July 2022. 1.3, agree that high-level progress updates will be provided to the IGB every 6 months. And 1.4, note the proposal to appoint a programme manager to support implementation, working with a range of partners to secure delivery and ongoing monitoring and review. And did you indicate, Jane, there was a further one?
Yes, agree to the issue of directions in relation to the 3-year workforce plan to NHS Tayside, Perth and Kinross.
Thank you. That's quite important. Thank you very much. Do we approve these recommendations? Thank you. Now move on to item 7.3, the Perth and Kinross HSCP Strategic Planning Group briefing note. For noting, who's going to speak to this?
Yeah, so the strategic planning group was held on May, which coincided with the rollout of both national and consultation process scheme. Scottish Government had already undertaken some consultation at the latter part of 21 and sent out all HSCPs an online consultation that they wanted completed. HSCP sorry, can you hear me better now? Yeah, sorry, I'm getting messages. The HSCP had sent out the consultation document to the strategy groups and to a series of staffing leads, and then took it to the strategic planning group for consultation. They focused the discussion around the 4 themes from within the consultation document: place and well-being, preventative and proactive care, integrated care planning, and integrated unscheduled care. The group explored all of these questions attached to the key themes in depth and established a variety of mirrored points, I would suggest, that suggested there was a sense of needing more integrated working, deeper understanding of roles of professionals, simplified but integrated pathways, including the third and independent sector, improved methods of communication being required, and known issues already to us around social isolation and rurality were highlighted as areas that presented particular difficulty. The feedback from the strategic planning group and that of our other engagement activity, including forthcoming community engagement meetings, which are held this week actually, will be collated and returned to the Scottish Government, ensuring collaborative and inclusive approach to our consultation. And this will contribute to the end Scottish Government document, the Health and Social Care Strategy for Older People, which is due to be published later in 2022. In addition to this, our Chief Operating Officer, Karen Donaldson, came and spoke to the group around the revised integration scheme. She had the week previously attended the user reference group and presented on the scheme and what had changed and what was the same within it. There followed a discussion regards what we've talked about earlier on in today's meeting regards voting rights, and Karen and Jackie both discussed the fact that we need something for a change of legislation with regards to that. The integration scheme went out for consultation until the 27th of May, and feedback was encouraged from the group and through the groups that the membership represent. And the revised integration scheme went to council last week, as you know, and it's due to be submitted to the Scottish Government on 30th of June.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions, points to make? None? Thank you. The document is duly noted then. We're going to take a 10-minute break and we'll return. We'll come back about 11:45, 11:47. Okay. Was that time? Oh, sorry. About 5:02, sorry. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome back. We're now going to move straight into item 8, finance and governance. And as I indicated earlier, the order has changed in that we will now take 8.2 first, and then followed by 8.3 and then 8.1. So so who's going to lead on 8.2? Jane, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And just to mind IGB members that normally these three papers would be presented to the IGB's Audit and Performance Committee. However, due to the significant change in membership and the need for Audit and Performance Committee members to be appointed, these papers are required to come forward to the IGB to make sure that we comply with Audit Scotland's deadlines for submission of the draft annual accounts. So if I can first of all take the internal audit annual report for 21-22, that report would normally be presented by Jackie Clark, the IGB's Chief Internal Auditor. Unfortunately, Jackie is not able to be with us this morning. If there are questions on the report that you would require answers to, then we will need to take these away and respond offline. However, in summary, internal audit is required to provide an annual assurance statement on the overall adequacy and effectiveness of the framework of governance, risk management and control for the IGB. Within that, an annual opinion must be given that must conclude on the overall effectiveness of controls and of governance. And this report fulfills that requirement. And it's at section 5, I think it is, in the report. Section 5.1, in the Chief Internal Auditor's opinion, reasonable reliance can be placed on the IGB's risk management and governance arrangements and systems of internal control for 21-22, subject to management implementation of the agreed actions detailed in the internal audit report that have been carried out in the year. So it's a positive conclusion in relation to the internal auditor's report. But if there are questions, we can try and answer them, but otherwise we can take them away to Jackie.
Thank you very much, Jane. Are there any questions for Jane on this report, bearing in mind that the author isn't here? In that case, I think we're content to note the content of the report and the audit opinion laid out in section 5. Thank you. Let's now move on to 8.3, annual governance statement.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce the annual governance statement for the year 21-22. The IGB is asked to approve this, and this statement provides assurance about the effectiveness of the governance frameworks and internal controls for the Health and Social Care Partnership and the IGB. It follows a review of our rules, systems, processes, culture and values to ensure that we're legally compliant, ethically sound and our arrangements are fit for purpose. So this self-assessment has been led by Jane Smith as Chief Finance Officer and Head of Corporate Services, and the self-assessment has been endorsed by the Health and Social Care Partnerships Executive Management Team. The report and the statement itself highlight progress and further areas for improvement, which will be taken forward in a partnership improvement plan. And the proposal is that that will be monitored and scrutinised by the Audit and Performance Committee and reported to at each of its meetings going forward. The annual governance statement sets out a number of key improvements that have been taken forward during the year, and which has seen the Health and Social Care Partnership continue to manage the complexities of continual change required by the response to the pandemic. And in section 4, page 167 of your pack, there's an action plan 22-23 setting out those areas of improvement. and a forward look under the headings of leadership, culture and values, practice, stakeholder engagement, vision, direction, purpose and decision making. In addition, just taking account of your comments, Chair, in relation to an earlier report, I would suggest that we also take forward a closer look at and assess our compliance with our public sector duties under the Equalities Act. So just to bring this statement forward, and happy to pass over and take any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Chair. Jackie, would you be able to give a brief overview of the changes since the last year's annual government statement?
I'm going to ask Jane Smith to answer that question.
Okay, apologies. We have attempted within the draft AGS to highlight the changes that we've made in the year. If it's helpful, I can briefly go through these. They come under each of the headings that Jackie's just outlined. But so if I can quickly go through these. In relation to COVID particular governance arrangements, we have prepared medium-term strategic plans that reflect living with COVID environment. That's a significant change, moving us away from COVID-specific plans to having strategic plans that embed our learning from COVID. That's a change in year. In relation to leadership, culture and values, we have supported significantly the work for the review of the integration scheme, and that's moved that along significantly, which we'll come on to later on in the agenda. We have further improved our induction for new members and are also supporting the induction of new PKC elected members in a more structured way. So again, that's a change. In relation to stakeholder engagement, we have employed additional resources to ensure that we have a digital and a creative approach to coordinating communication with our stakeholders and across the community. And we have reviewed, amended standing orders, as we've discussed it earlier on in the meeting, to increase membership to include one additional service user public partner and one carer public partner, so 2 from each. So that's been a significant change in the year. In relation to vision, direction and purpose, our improvement activities included, as I've already mentioned, 3-year strategic delivery plans across older people, learning disabilities and autism and community mental health that set out our strategic direction, our vision, and with attached performance frameworks. To support all of that, to delivery of significant strategic change, transformation, as well as to support ongoing delivery of operational services, increased senior management capacity, and within that have enhanced our strategic planning capacity, and that was agreed by the IJB in the year. Independent review of adult social care in Scotland and the future development of the National Care Service has, we've recognised, will have significant implications for the IGB, and we've provided development sessions to our IGB members on that throughout the year to make sure that as a membership they're fully engaged and understanding of that. There'll be an opportunity to do that moving forward as well. In relation to decision making, we have as part of the development of our strategic plans and in relation to other opportunities, we've had a significant number of development sessions with our IGB members to ensure clear understanding and engagement and contribution to the development of our plan. In relation to organisational development, we have a 3-year workforce plan developed during the year, which I'm delighted has been approved today. We have further to support the organisation invested in corporate support, which has been an ongoing issue for the last 6 years for the IGB, and we've got approval from the IGB over the course of the year and through the financial plan for significant investment in performance business improvement and other support capacity. As I've said, we've had endorsement for increased senior management capacity alongside that, which will improve our overall effectiveness. In relation to scrutiny and accountability and linked performance, we've also agreed through the Audit and Performance Committee a systematic approach to obtaining regular patient service user feedback across our services, a mechanism for ongoing linking with our patients and service users, our people, to understand how what their outcomes are and how the services are for them. And we're also building on that with a service level agreement for care opinion, which is not reflected in here, but also enhances our patient and service user feedback. So significant improvement in that during the year. One further improvement in relation to general assurance reporting arrangements to the IGBs in relation to our clinical care governance assurance reporting, where we have embedded, it's still in its early stages, but a new and strengthened approach for escalating significant operational risk which may impact on the IGB objectives, and that's now flowing through our Audit and Performance Committee and providing them with an understanding of what that means for the IGB strategic objectives. And we're looking in the improvement activity to expand that to include inpatient mental health escalation, and in relation to large hospital set-aside service unscheduled care, you'll see that that's an improvement action that will ensure that IGB is assured around operational risks and impact on strategic objectives.
Thank you, Jane. Are there questions for Jane?
Can I say thank you, Jane, for that very clear and concise and helpful reply.
Thank you, Jane. I'd like to thank you and all the people who've been involved in writing this report. I greatly appreciate it. It's very clear. Thank you. So the takes us to the recommendation to approve the 2021-22 annual governance statement for inclusion in the unaudited annual accounts. Do we approve? Yes, thank you. That then takes us to item 8.1, unaudited annual accounts.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to present the draft Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board annual accounts for 2021-22. I would draw your attention firstly to the management commentary, which provides an overview of strategy, objectives and performance, as well as issues and risks that the IGB are facing in the future. Within the financial overview, we set out the financial performance and report an operational underspend for 21-22 of £1.569 million. And this underspend has been driven by three main factors: by the late decision by the Scottish Government to allow slippage in savings to be offset by Scottish Government COVID funding. That's had a significant impact on our outturn. A significant and unanticipated increase in nationally negotiated rebates in relation to general practice prescribing, and an unanticipated Scottish Government funding for living wage costs for 21-22. These are the three key main factors that have driven that significant unplanned underspend. The £1.5 million underspend contributes to a significant increase in reserves being carried forward to 22-23. Further £17.7 million increase in reserves is driven largely by Scottish Government funding passed out late in the financial year, most significantly related to COVID-19 funding, winter resilience funding and primary care funding. The £19.349 million surplus in the income and expenditure statement represents the net increase in the reserves position in 21-22, and the total reserves of £33.2 million are reflected in the year-end balance sheet. Following approval by the IGB today, the draft accounts will be submitted to external audit and made available for public inspection. External audit is due to take place between July and August, with final accounts and the external audit report coming forward to the IGB Audit and Performance Committee in September. Before opening for questions, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank my finance team and to Donna Mitchell in particular for the very timely production of the annual accounts this year, which again has been another challenging year for the finance team, and delighted to bring them forward on a timely basis. Thank you.
Any questions for Jane, please? Thank you. Thank you, Jane. And I think the previous development session time we've had on this, that this has been well received and well understood. I think the coming years are going to be much more challenging. I think we probably know. So I'd like to therefore propose for consideration and approval. Do we approve the unaudited annual account? Thank you. That then takes us on to the IJB Members Code of Conduct. And Scott, could you take us the route for this, just how we got to this point and why it's come today?
Thank you, Chair. The original Members Code of Conduct was agreed back in 2015 around the inception of the board. This is a new code of conduct that comes following publication by Scottish Government of a new model code of conduct, and it also involves the Standards Commission for Scotland. The revised code the revised model code was passed by Parliament in October 2021, and it places a duty on IGB and other public sector bodies to agree a revised code of conduct. The revised code takes account of some slight changes in regards to members taking personal responsibility for their own behaviour and to have an awareness of the organisation's policies in relation to a number of areas such as social media, equality, diversity, and along with bullying and harassment. So the code is attached to the report, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments from board members. Thanks.
Comments? Just one comment. I'm quite pleased to see the strengthening of our whistleblowing, and I believe that we will be doing much more around guidance on this in due course with the IJB. Is that correct, Donald?
Probably one for management to answer rather than myself, but I'd certainly, as the NHS Tayside whistleblowing champion, I'm keen to see that whistleblowing standards are adopted across the whole healthcare system. So I would certainly very much welcome that. I see Jackie's nod.
Thank you very much. And do we approve this code of conduct? Yes, thank you very much. That then takes us on to the uh, 9.1. Yeah, 9.1. Again, for information, revision of Perth and Kinross integration scheme.
Thank you. I'm happy just to give a brief introduction. IGB members will have had updates throughout the period of revision. This is a report that was provided by Karen Donaldson, the Chief Operating Officer for the Council, in her lead role for the project of the revision of the scheme on behalf of the Council, working with a project team with representation of the 3 councils involved and NHS Tayside. This scheme, as Councillor Stewart mentioned earlier, was approved by Perth and Kinross Council at its meeting last week on the 22nd of June, and the scheme itself will come forward to NHS Tayside's board on the 30th of June for approval, and thereafter submission to the Scottish Government.
Any questions or comments? Colin, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, one of the more complex elements of the integration scheme is around the division between Perth and Kinross IJB's strategic planning partner responsibility for inpatient mental health and the operational oversight of that, while the operational management is delivered by NHS Tayside in this proposed scheme. I wondered if the Chief Officer could outline what the future reporting requirements would be, because obviously if we have operational oversight and a strategic planning lead, we need to be assured regarding the operational aspects of that in order to make sure that we're fulfilling our duties in respect to the scheme.
Jackie?
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. As you raise an important issue, because the revision of the scheme introduces a new concept of lead partner for the Chief Officer and lead responsibilities for strategic planning for mental health services across Tayside within this scheme. And it might be helpful for the IJB to be aware that I'm having a series of strategic discussions. The first will take place next week. That will involve the executive lead, which is the Executive Nurse Director for NHS Tayside for inpatient mental health services, learning disability and alcohol and drug services, inpatient services. Lorna Wigan as the Chief Officer for Acute Services, who also has the executive lead for CAMS services, and the other two Chief Officers. And at that meeting, we will be discussing future reporting. And it's my intention that at our next meeting that I will bring forward a report which will indicate what the expand on the definitions, expand on how those will operate in practice for consideration at the next IJB. And given the importance of this and the discussion that we had earlier in relation to inpatient mental health and the strong indications that this should be a standing item on the IJB, then it would be my intention to bring forward a report.
Thank you very much, and I think that members will be pleased that you'll be updating at each meeting. Thank you. Any further questions on the? Okay, this paper is just for information, and thank you very much indeed. Thank you. It's the forward planner. That's 9.2. Again, that's for information in terms of our forward planner 22-23. Okay. Right, thank you. And item 10 is the list of the future IJB meetings and development sessions. And Scott's going to come in quickly, and I want to say something else at the end of the meeting as well.
Thank you, Chair. We've just been alerted there's a typo on the agenda for item 10. It lists the first meeting date after this is the 21st of August. That should actually be the Wednesday, the 31st of August.
Thank you. That's a relief. Thank you very much indeed. that takes us almost to the end of the meeting. I just wanted to pick up on something that was raised earlier on, in particular around communication. And probably from my perspective, I think it's really important thinking ahead that when we reach the end of a meeting, we have some sense of what the key issues are that have emerged from the meeting for public communication means. And I would like to add in, if it's possible, time-wise at each meeting, some perhaps reflections on the meeting or areas that we would like to highlight from the papers that we'd want to see out there, the key areas. We want to ensure that the public know what is the most important things for the IJB and for the staff as well, for that matter, and for the people that we serve. So I'd very much like us to think about to build it into our planning for the next meeting. And there's one further thing that is again closely related to communication, and that is around about engagement. And now that we are able to go out and see places of where staff and the voluntary sector, etc., are actually working, prison healthcare, for example, I would quite like to see a regular itinerary of places where we can now actually go and speak to real people who are delivering services. I think it's long overdue for us, and particularly for new members who've never had the opportunity. And I might say one of the first experiences I had was going to Murray Royal, and it was such an excellent session. I remember working and talking to staff there at the time, and I really understood what the challenges and what the positives were in their work. So these things really matter. So we need to get out there and be on the front foot about that. But I'd also like to see much more in the third sector as well. And there are a number of references within the papers about projects we need to see. And so if we could coordinate these, that would be really helpful. But thank you very much indeed. I know it's been a kind of quirky meeting with this kind of video system, but I'm really grateful for A, everyone reading the papers thoroughly, and B, for contributing in the whole. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and see you at the next meeting on the 31st.
Thank you.